Hello, guys and girls, and now we are almost at the end. The last topic we're going to be covering, and it's Python OOP. And I can assure you that this would be the best tutorial on Python OOP you will see on YouTube. And I'm going to make sure to specify every single details on everything you need to know on Python OOP just in one video. And I'll try to make it a very short video and cool as well. Uh, you know, so if you are new here, don't be afraid to subscribe because I upload new videos every week casually. Okay, so let's get started. So this is a brief overview of what we're going to be covering in this, and this would be our practice exercise. It looks a little bit tough. I'm sure it is tough, I can tell you. So this is everything we're going to be covering in just this video. I just made it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 comments on it so I can remember what I'm going to be working on with you on this video with you guys. Okay, so that's just how we're going to be working on this video. So let's get started. So what is OOP? You have to understand what OOP means before you can start working with this video, and make sure you check out all of my videos so it will serve as a blueprint before entering this video so you won't get confused. Okay, so OOP, it helps us structure code by grouping data, attributes, variables, and behavior. Like grouping data, the data is the attributes and variables, and behavior, methods or function, into reusable blueprints called classes. Don't worry, don't get confused. I will explain everything step by step when we enter the code writing. Okay, so an object is an instance of a class. Think of a class as a blueprint, like a car design, and an object as the actual car built from that blueprint. Okay, so um, an object is an instance of a class. Like I don't know if there's a very good way I'm going to explain this without coding, but just think of a class as a blueprint, like you have a car design and an object as the actual car built. Okay, don't get confused. When we start coding, I'll explain everything step by step and make you guys understand it very, very well. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing is create a simple class with attributes and a method. Okay, so let's start. And I hope you guys are ready with your notes and coding along with me. So the first thing we're going to be doing is I'll call it class. We'll call it class car. So remember, in Python, you don't need to specify that this is a class. You don't need to specify like the data type of what you're working with. Don't worry, don't get confused. I will explain it as we go on. So now we have class of car. So the class of car would be then now everybody knows that we have a class called car, right? Yeah. So we'll call it function, but this is not like a function. It's called a constructor in Python. How to create a constructor in Python is very different from other things. So you say something like def and double underscore initialize. So this thing is initialized, but it's basically like init. They call it init, but it's called initialize. So this constructor, it's served like as a blueprint, so you can easily create objects when you're working with Python. Okay, so you say initialize. What will you do? Yeah, so you can just tap this in. But when throughout this video you see something called self. So this self is very important. It's just like the this keyword in other programming languages, but this self is very important. So you'll be saying it, but if I'm to advise you, just ignore the self, but always put it, but just ignore it so you don't get confused. Okay, so you see def is a function, as we said in our last function videos. You can check it out. Def is to call a function. So init, initialize, it means that it's telling Python that yes, I want to create a constructor. So Python will be like, so what should be in your constructor? What should be in your constructor? Now we are not assigning any variable or anything, so we are going to do it later on. So what I'm going to call it, so this self is very important. That's why Python just suggested it for us initially. So what should be in our constructor? Our constructor should have a brand for the car and also a color for the car as well. So it has a brand and a color. That's why I told you to always ignore this self. So but it's very useful. Like, don't ignore it, just don't look at it, just cover it up and just be working with this as your normal working things. But always put this in front of your code to let Python know that this keyword is going to be needed in this particular attribute or something. So we have the self, this is just this keyword brand, and it has color as well. So our car has brand and it has color. So we initialize it. So we now say we'll call it self dot brand. Dot brand is equals brand. So what it means is that any value that you pass to this self, any value that you pass to this brand would be, you use it in the constructor of this brand. So the next thing we're going to do is self dot color is equals color, like this. Okay, so self dot brand is equals brand, self dot color is equals color. So you don't need this self dot self equals self or anything. So this self is just to help Python know, okay, that any value you pass into this brand would be the brand, any value you pass into this color would be the color. So that's just it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing now is outside the def keyword, still inside the class. You can see Python doesn't use curly braces. It's use indentation, so to know where you are. So it's still outside this particular constructor, but still inside the class. We'll call a function called a function, and we'll name the function drive. So drive, like this. So you can see you must always add this yourself to let Python know that you're going to be working with self with a this keyword, or you can just call it self. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to print something. So this is a function, so we'll print, I'll use printf to make it more understandable. So printf, and I'll call the, in curly braces, I'll call self dot color. So this color is it's just like, I want to say the, let's say the user pass in red, and the color of the car is red, and the brand is like Toyota or something. Then you can now see the red Toyota is driving. So that's what I'm trying to do here. So the self dot color, so it's getting the user's inputs, the self dot color, this self dot color that we used it, like we say the self dot color is equals any color that the user passed in. Yeah. So the self dot color, and we'll also use under curly braces, and we'll say self dot brand is driving, like this. So the self dot color, that means any color that the user gives, and the brand is driving. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is we'll create an instance of the class, but this time around we're going to go outside everything, outside the class and outside the function. Then we'll just, all we need to do is we'll call car, I'll just call it car1 is equals car, and we'll say, so the value we are going to be passing in, that's why I say you should ignore this self. The values we are going to be passing in is firstly the brand, then we're now passing the color, like this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to pass in is the brand. So what's the brand of the car? So we'll call Toyota. Yeah, so then the next thing we're going to be passing in would be the color, and it would be red, like this. And where's my mouse? Can't see my mouse. Yeah, it's just froze a little bit. So that's what it does. So this constructor is just like, let me write a comment right here. So the constructor is just like saying it builds a car like this, the same car class, and then you can now you put a brand and a color when calling the car class. Like for instance, now if I delete this, it's like giving me a warning here, it needs something. Okay, so now if I just put it back, oh sorry, so if I just put it back like this, it gives me no errors. So we are going to call car1 equals car, Toyota, and red. The next one, let me just give another car2 is equals car, we'll just call it Honda, I'll call it Honda and blue. Okay, so now what we are going to do is so you see we have initialized some values to it. So the brand is Toyota. You can see how PyCharm is giving us hints. So the brand is Toyota and the color is red. So these hints is so you don't misplace the settings, the structure, because if you make a mistake, like if you put the red first before the brand, it will like assign red as the brand, and same thing here as well. So the next thing we're going to do, let's call the drive function that we created, this drive function, like this. So most people, most things that confuse most people are they will think that this self, you need to like input a value to the self because it has a parameter of self. No, you don't need to input any value. This self is just to let Python know that, yeah, you want to call the self keyword here, like this keyword. Okay, so now let's print out something. So we now say car1 dot drive like this, and we now call car2, sorry, car2 dot drive like this. Okay, so if I run this program, shift F10, you see the red Toyota is driving and the blue Honda is driving like this. So you can see the red Toyota is driving and the blue Honda is driving. So that's just how to work with classes. The first step of working with classes that you just need to understand. You have your constructor, so you can assign values straight up like this. So you have your constructor, you call the init, initialize, put itself to let Python know they are going to be working with it, brand and color. So self.brand is equals brand, self.color is equals color. And the same thing, you use drive. You can create as much, any amount of definitions you need, any amount of functions you need. Like you can create more def, or let's say stop. You remember yourself and you indent, and you can just print. I'll use print f, and you can print d. I'll just copy this same thing right here. Control C, and I'll paste it here. Control V. The self.color.brand is, I'll just print this as just stop. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, maybe you can just call the function. So I can just say car1 dot stop, and I'll call car2 dot stop like this. So you can see shift F10. If I run it, you see in our console, the red Toyota is driving, the blue Honda is driving, the red Toyota just stopped, the blue Honda just stopped. So that's it. That's just how you need to do, to know all the things you need to know, like to get started with classes and objects. So you constructor, you can create as many functions as you need. Then you create an instance of the classes like car1, car Toyota red, car2, car Honda blue. You assign values to it like this using what you gave in the constructor. Like if I give another function in the constructor, like now it needs a, let's say, plate number or something, you can see it's giving like an error right here. Okay, it's giving an error. I don't know. Okay, this is not an error. It's just saying that I don't know why it doesn't like the naming convention number like this, plate number. So if you assign it self dot plate number is equals plate number, I'll just change this to my camel casing. I don't know why PyCharm don't like camel casing. So, but it doesn't affect this, but now it affects this value right here. It affects this one because now Python, so if I should run this, it gives an error. It gives an error. So it's missing one requirement, positional argument, plate number. So that's what constructors is. So if you construct something, it needs you to put in all the values, the brand, the color, and the plate number. Ignore the self. Remember what I said. And I'll just ignore this self. Okay. So I'll just, yeah, control Z and work with what we are working with. Okay. So that's basically it. So the next thing we're going to be going to now is encapsulation. Encapsulation. Okay, this is very hard to pronounce. Encapsulation. Okay, I'll just delete this one. So I just hope, I know there is a lot to take in, and I hope that you just have like a brief understanding of how this works. And as we're walking through, even in our practice exercise that we're going to do at the end, I hope you still have more understanding on it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is I'll just delete this one so we can work with another thing, another class, make it more understandable. So I'll just delete this first one since we have gone through it. So the next thing is encapsulation. Encapsulation, the best way to understand encapsulation, so I'll use a class called bank accounts because it's mostly your bank account that mostly needs like protection and stuff like that because everyone loves money. So we have a class. I call the class bank account. Now I'll call it constructor. So I'll call the def keyword. What else? Underscore initialize it, and I'll just tap design. So it gives me the self. So now initialize it. So what should be the parameters? It should have an owner. Okay, have the name of the owner, and what else? Let us call balance so we can work with the encapsulation very well. So the owner and the balance. Okay, everyone is with me, right? So the next thing now, we are going to assign the owner. Self dot owner is equals owner, like this. Self dot owner equals owner. Now is here, it's now that encapsulation comes in. We don't want the balance to be accessible to any other class. So what we're going to be doing, we don't want it to be accessible anywhere, like randomly in our program. What we're going to do is self dot double underscore and balance, like this. Okay, so self dot double underscore and balance is equals balance. So this is now telling Python, oh, this balance is, sorry, balance, like this. So this balance, oh, is a private a private variable that don't need to be accessed anyhow because it's like a user's personal information. Okay, so now that's it. So if you have something like this, double underscore, so the balance is a private, you know that Python don't need all these public, private, all those things. It doesn't need all those descriptions. Just tell it what to do and it already knows and it suggests and does the thing. So Python is very easy and is also cool as well. So the next thing we're going to do to make you understand more on encapsulation, we're going to be doing, I'll do deposit, withdraw, just deposit and withdraw. I think it will be fine. A function called deposit and withdraw. Now still inside the class, but outside our first constructor, we'll call a def keyword and we'll call it deposit, like this. So now what are we going to do? Yeah, we need the self. Then the self, just ignore it, but we just need it. Then we'll now add the amount the user wants to deposit, like this. So you see the amount. So the deposit needs amount, okay? How much you want to deposit? Just ignore the self keyword, but you need it, but just ignore it, please. So amount, deposit, and the parameter it requires is amount, okay? So the next thing we're going to be doing is, so we now call the self dot underscore balance because it's a private keyword. Then we'll call the shortcuts plus equals amount. So what it does is, so the balance is plus equals, or you can just say, if you don't understand what this plus equals means, you can just do it like self dot balance is equals self dot balance plus amount. So yeah, if you don't understand what the plus equals means, it's just basically the same thing. Okay, so like self dot balance plus amount. So the deposit function, what it does, it takes this balance right here, then any amount the user puts, it adds it to the balance. So that's what that first thing I did means, but that one is just like a short way of doing things. So self dot balance plus the amount that the user enters into this amount parameter. Okay, so if I should we'll still stick with the first one I did, but I just want to show you guys what it does like initially. So that's still the same thing. Oh, why is this thing still going like this? Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is since we have added the amount the user puts into our balance, we can now print out the balance like this. If I print out, I'll use printf to make this more quick, and I will say you can just make it more fun, but I'll just say deposited. Let me just call it self like this, self dot owner deposited. So we'll now call the balance. We'll now say deposited. We'll call amount first. So we'll tell him how much the person deposited. So deposited this particular amount. So we'll say foot stop. So new balance is equals self dot double underscore balance, because the balance is a private stuff. Okay, so that's it. That's basically what you need to know. So our function, this is our deposit function. What was this? This is our deposit function. What it basically does, it takes in a an argument called amount. So the user has to put the amount. So we add it to the user's balance and print, okay, the user deposited so and so amounts, then the new balance is equals the balance that is there. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do, we are going to call a function def, and we'll call it withdraw, and yeah, we need the self. So withdraw, also we also need the amount the user want to withdraw. And now, but this one we have to be more careful. Why? Because let's say you have like 200 bucks. Like, I'm not being careful in even the deposit and stuff. I just wanted to make this encapsulation like short a little bit so we can move on to the next thing. So uh so for the withdraw, we have to make something, because you can't have like $200 in your account and withdraw like 500 or 5,000 or something. So we have to do if the amount, like this amount that we use there, the amount is less than or equals the balance, we call the self dot underscore balance, like this. So if the amount is less than or equals the balance, so you can withdraw. But if you want to add like extra thing, like if you don't want the user to withdraw so certain amounts, like let's say you want to do that to have like $5 in the account, you can set it up. But this one I'm going to be working with, the user can withdraw every single thing. So if the amount is less than or equals self dot balance, if it's less than the balance, what we are going to do is we now call the self dot underscore balance minus equals amounts. So the same thing we did that in the addition one is the same thing. So this thing is just basically like saying self dot balance is equals self dot underscore balance minus amount. So it's still the same thing. Self dot balance is equals self dot balance minus the amount the user wants to withdraw. So we'll just stick with the last one we did like this. Okay, yeah. So if the user's amount is less than the balance, his or her balance, then we can now withdraw it. We'll subtract the value. So that's it. So the next thing we're going to do now, we're going to tell the user that he or she have withdrawn the amount. So we'll just print something to make it more fun. I'll use print f for this. So I'll now say withdrew what? I'll now call the amount the user withdrew, and I'll put full stop here, and I'll say new balance is equals, so I'll now call self dot underscore balance, like this. So that's it. So that's what you need to know in working with encapsulation. Okay, we need our else. So if it doesn't meet the requirement of the if, so we'll just use else and see, and we'll just print insufficient funds. Okay, so that's it. I'll just put exclamation mark here. So that's just it. So the constructor and two functions that we're going to be working with. Okay, so now let's go outside our class. So this is just our class. This is the class, like this. See all the things in our class. Yeah, so that's it. So you can also create another folder, like another Python folder, and then import the class for. But you see, I'm working with comments, so I don't want to do that. So you can still do anyway, but this is not a good practice, but it still sends the points across. Okay, so that's it. So the next thing, then outside this, we are going to be doing, I would now call like an account. Let me see. I'll just call it user account is now equals. So now we're going to call our bank account class bank account. So what are the requirements in our bank account? It needs to have a owner and a balance. Okay, so I'll now call the balance. The owner will be Charles. You can use anything, and then my balance should be like $100. Okay, so now what are we going to do next? We're going to do user account dot deposit. So how much do we want to deposit? We'll deposit 50. So now we deposited 50. So initially our account balance will be 150, and let's try to withdraw 300. So I'll call user accounts dot withdraw 500 or something. Let's say we draw 500. So if I run this program, you see Charles deposited 50, new balance equals 150. You can see our bank account has Charles and the balance, our initial balance is 100. So I deposited 50, my balance is 150, and it said insufficient funds because I can't withdraw 500. Okay, but now let's say my balance is 300 and I like deposited, or no, let's say my balance is 700 and I deposited 150. Now I want to withdraw 500 or something. So if I run this program, you see Charles deposited right here. The Charles deposited 150, new balance 850, and then withdraw 500, new balance 350. So you can see you can use it and make cool programs, play around with it, and make cool things with it, and it will also make you understand it more better. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is I'll just escape this. So that's it for encapsulation. I told you guys this video will take long, so I'll just delete encapsulation, and I hope you guys understand it. You can go through it on your own and play around with encapsulation. So this is basically everything we covered, so I will just delete it. So the next thing we're going to be working on is, holy shit, what's this? Maybe I mistakenly, yeah, we don't need to. Inheritance. So inheritance has example child class reusing parents class. For instance, we have I'll just quickly do this one. We have a class animal. So the class animal would be, and I'll say def speak. An animal can speak. So I won't create a constructor for this one. I just want to show you guys how to work with inheritance. Okay, and I want to make it really brief. So you have yourself. So it doesn't take any inputs, just call the function. So we'll just print something. The animal makes a sound like this. Okay, so now still the same thing. So the next thing, I'll now call like a class, another class. I'll have another class. Remember, I told you guys it's not good practice to like have your class in the same file, but I just, I'm writing in comments, and we have to follow the structure like this. So now to make Python know that you're going to be inheriting from a parent class like animal, all you need to do is just in parentheses you put animal. So Python now know, okay, this dog is going to be inheriting from animal. So we'll now call this and we'll say animal def, and we'll call this speak self, and we'll now print wolf. So that's it. So you can see, so we have a class of animal, it speaks. You can see what this arrows is doing, it's showing. So parents, children, it's very cool. So class and dog, it's inheriting from animal, so you have to put it inside parentheses, def speak, and print wolf and stuff like that. So the next one we're going to be doing is I'm going to call another class, and I'll name it class, let's say cats. Okay, it's going to be inheriting from what? Animal. And then we'll give it its own function. Def speak would be, sorry, def speak, then we'll now print meal like this. Okay, so that's it. So you can see the dog class is inheriting from the animal class, the cat class is also inheriting from the animal class. So the next thing we're going to be doing is I'll call an instance outside the class, not inside any of the classes. So I will now call my dog is equals, so I'll call the dog class. And I'll now say my cat is equals, I'll call the cats class. So since we don't have any constructor for the cat and dog, the dog class here, or any constructor for the cat class here, so we don't need to assign any value. If not, we have like a constructor and we'll be like def init self name color of the dog. Then we now say bingo brown, this thing, cat's name, this, and stuff like that. So we can now use I can now say my dog dot speak, and I want to say my cat dot speak. So if I should run this program, It's very simple. You know what will happen. It said woof woof and meow. So you can see the dog can speak and the woof woof woof. It also does the same thing. So this is just basically how you need to work with inheritance. It's very useful and it's also good in polymorphism. Like let's say now let's just dive in. That's just basically everything you need to understand in inheritance for just the basics though. So that's just it. So I'll just move into polymorphism so we can understand it more better. So polymorphism is same method, different behavior. Like let's say now I'll just say we have like it, in Python you don't need to tell Python that, oh, this is a class, you just call it and Python just say, okay, this is a class. Python already finds the data types of many types of of what you pass in. So now I can just say, let's say I have this thing called all animals is equal. So this thing now, this all animals, Python now assume that we are referring to this animal class. So all animals is equals. So I'm trying to explain polymorphism right here. So we have something like a list, and we'll now call the dog class inside the list, and we'll call the cat class inside the list. You see? So that now what do we want to do? If we want to check do the same thing we did up here, but this time around using polymorphism structure. Sorry, I'll just bring it back. So all the same thing, we can now do something like for animals in all animals, we now do animals dot speak. So we'll call this speak function. So if I should run it, you can see woof woof meow woof woof meow. So you can see, okay, I'll just delete this first one. That is what made it to. So if I run this, you see woof woof meow. So it does the same thing. It does the same thing. So polymorphism, you can also use this, put all the functions and loop through all the animals in all animals and call their speak method. Okay, so that's basically it. So the next one we're going to be doing is using the non-scope. So I'll make this one quick so we can dive into our example. So I just hope you understand the basics of polymorphism and inheritance. So you can use polymorphism, it's just basically a Greek word, it means many forms. So polymorphism, inheritance, I hope you understand it. Play around with it and see more functionality and things you can work with it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be doing is using none in a class constructor and scope inside methods. So this one is just I just wanted to hit some few points. You can use none and stuff like that. So now let's say we have a class. I'll call a class and I'll name it students. So the class is a student class, and I will call a constructor in it. Yeah. So initialize self. So the student class should just have a name. We'll just work with only a name. So now initially I'll just assign the name to be equals none like this. So the name, even if they not pass any arguments or any function to the name, it's just let's make it as none. So the name is equals none initially, in case the user not put anything inside the instance of the class or something. So the next thing, I'll now use the self dot name is equals name like this. So the next thing I would do outside here, I'll now call it function. I'll call it introduce. So we can introduce the user. Introduce will be the name of the function, and it will take in self, yeah, just self. So the next thing is I'll now say if self dot the name is not none. So if the user assigned have a name is what it just says. If the self dot name is not none, because initially we set it as none. So if the name is not none, then we'll print, let's say should I use printf? Yeah, I'll just use printf. I'll just say my name is self.name like this. Okay, so my name is self.name, my name is this. So my name is any value that the user puts into this place. Okay, so any value the user puts into the name. So that's it. So else, in case the thing is known, because the first time our if statement says if self.name is not known, you print the user's name, but else let's print I don't have a name yet. Okay, so that's it. That was basically what we have to do. So now outside our class, in our console, in our normal text editor, we'll say, I'll just call it student1 is equals, we'll call the student class you see, if we just give an empty constructor like this, it doesn't give us an error, because now Python does say, okay, the name is just none. Okay, so but now let's assign the name to like Charles, like this. Charles. Okay, so then now I'll now say students2 is equals, I'll call the students class, and I'll just give it a no, I'll not put it any value. Now Python will say that, oh, the name is equals not none, like this. So now let's call the introduce. Let's introduce the two students. So I'll now say students one dot introduce. I'll now say students two dot introduce, like this. So students one dot introduce and student two dot introduce. So if I should run this program, you see my name is Charles, and the second one says I don't have a name yet. So that just it. So that's basically what you need to know in using none in a class constructor and scope and inside methods and stuff like that. So that's just what you need to know in classes for now as a beginner. So don't worry yourself. I'll try to make more cool and more intensive videos on this, because it's very good in making cool and very good functional programs. Okay, now let's move into our practice exercise. Okay, yeah, so that's it. Great. So these are practice exercises. It will take time, and I hope you watch to the end of this practice exercise. So the first thing, yeah, and I will say that you learn a lot when watching to it. Okay. So the first thing we are going to be doing is create a book class with title and author attributes. Create a library class that can add books, can show all books, can find a book by title. Then test the library by adding at least 3 books, showing all the books, and searching for one book in by title. So try working on it yourself. If you just try working on it yourself, and if you can't, if you do what you can, then we'll work on it together. Okay. Okay, back to it. I hope you guys tried something. Remember, you might derive it using a different answer, but I'm going to use how I understand it. Okay. So firstly, we're going to create a book class, and I'll call the class and I'll name it book, and then I'll create the constructor for the book. The book should have, because they say it should have title and author attributes. So I'll create a constructor for it. I'll call the init. I'll say, so the self, ignore the self. I'll call it title, and it also have author, like this. So self title author. So I'll now say self dot title is equals title. I'll do the same thing. Self dot author is equals author, like this. So now we have created a book class. Now all I need to do is, there's a function I did not show you guys, but I'll show you guys now. So if you do def underscore underscore str string self, like this, so what it's going to do is it's going to give a very good introduction, return a string of, it's just like to string, so you can like give a very good introduction of the person, like this. Let me say it will return, so the to string should return, it always returns something. So it returns, I'll just use f for this now. Let's go back like f. So I'll now say self dot title title by, so we'll call name of the book by the author, by self dot author, like this. Okay, so this send is going to return a string, just like this to string method. So it's going to return something, so we can easily print out something like this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is this self, and again, it's just like, so if you call your book class, you don't need to how am I going to explain this? So gosh, I just ran out of ideas. But also know it's just important to use something like this at the end of your code, so you can be able to like access your book class without, you know, gosh, I've actually forgotten how I understood this, like how I wanted to explain this. So but I'll just keep going though. So the next thing, we're going to create a library class, library, like this, library, and a class called library. The next thing, we're going to initialize it underscore not string control z net, yeah. So we're going to initialize it, and this one, it shouldn't have any parameter, it shouldn't have any value. What we need to do is to, now what we're going to do, we're going to call self we're going to just call like a normal self something like self dot books is equals an empty array. So this empty array is just so that we can be adding our books to it. So it don't mind about these books that you use there. You can call it anything. It's not more to be books. I just wanted to like show you guys. So in our library, it accepts just books as an empty array. So you can call it anything, my books or anything. So that's it. So we can add books to the library. That's why I just did the self dot books. So we don't need to have any value in our constructor of our library. I just did this so we can add it and we can work with the library as an array. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is def and I'll call add book. You see a yellow line here. What it means is that I don't know, Python doesn't like this naming convention, but I think I'll just stick with it. Yeah, I think I'll just stick with it actually. Then now what we're going to be doing is we're going to passing a parameter. So the parameter will be the book. So add book. Ignore this self. Ignore the self. Yeah. Just look at this book. So this book now, what is telling Python is because you don't need to tell Python data type of what you're putting. So you can just put in book here. So Python know, oh, it's going to be coming from the book class, and this is just like a book that they're adding to the library. So the user has to like specify what is here. When the user is calling the add book function, it will specify the book that is going to add. Okay. So then the book, then what we're going to do now is self dot books. So we are calling the books array dot append. So what do you want to append to the books array? The book that the user passed in as a book class like this book. So we are going to be appending this book that the user passed in to this empty book class, empty book array. So this book that the user passed in to this empty book array. So the next thing we're going to do, then we'll now print, let's just tell the user that the book has been added successfully. I'll use printf. And I'll say book and I'll call it, I'll just say book added to the library book and I'll call the book title. Let me put something like this. Book. I'll now call book dot title. So if you're saying what the name, where did this title come from or something, you know it comes from this book class, because this class now is now determined as an like an object actually. So now it's what this value is expecting a book object to be entered inside this book, this parameter. Okay, so now we're going to call the title of the book and we're going to say book title added to library like this. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to then, the next function they say we should do is we should add, the library should add books. Now you can see we have done the adding books. Then now to show all the books, so the library can to show all the books. So I will now create another def and I'll call it show books and I'll put a self and comma, then what should they show books. No, you don't need to add anything to the show books because you just want to see the books, right? You don't have to like add a book that you want to show, or you want to see all the books in the library. So the next thing I'm going to do is if not self dot books. So what it means is if not self dot books like this, if there is no book in this array, all it does, if you now print, let's just print no books in the library like this. Then the next thing else, if there is book, you print, let's print something like books in the library, and I'll now say for book, for, so we have to like, you know, we have to iterate through the books in the library. So I can just say for, I'll just call it each book so you guys will understand it. Each book in self dot books. So these books you are saying that we're using BOOKS is this empty array we created earlier. Books. So you can name it anything. I just wanted it to be like more specific. Okay. So the next thing is So for each book in our book array, we'll print, let's print each book like this. So that's it. So now we can now show all the books. So that's just the easy function you use. Okay. The next thing they said is to find a book by title. Oh, this one will be a little bit confusing, but just stick around with me. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do now is we call my function and I'll call it find. Since we want to find the book, right? Find books. And now we have self. So what should we find the book by? So we need the user to put in the title of the book that he or she wants to find, right? So you are with me. So the user now puts in the title. So what are we going to do with the title? We now do for all the books. I'll just call it again each books. Each books in our self dot books. Yeah, like this. So for every book in our empty book array that we used up here, like this, what are we going to be doing? We're going to if book dot title dot lower is equals if sorry, if, let me say, this book is not supposed to be here. If each books dot title, yeah, so it's iterates through each books in our array if there is a book there. So if each book dot title is equals, so this thing is like comparison operator, is equals title dot lower. So this title now, it's this title that is here. This title is this title, like these two things is this one. Yeah. So the next thing we're going to be doing is so if title dot, if the book, like the book that is in the array, it's dot title dot lower is equals the title that the user inputs here dot lower, then what we are going to do is uh, then we'll print I'll use printf, so we'll just make it more specific. Found, and I'll call it each books. Yeah. So now it's found the book. If the title dot lower, if the book in this each book's title is equals to the title dot lower, we'll print that we have found the book. Then the next thing we're going to do is then we'll return. Yeah. So escape return. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is else. So we don't need to use else again. We'll just use, because we are returning, we'll just say book not found, like this. Okay, so this is just like a very stressful stuff to understand and grasp in a second, but if you look at it very well, you see that it's very cool. And if you try to understand it, you see that you have a very good understanding on it. And if you do it yourself again after watching this video, and come across few errors, go back and check what the error might be, you find out that you have more understanding than just sitting and watching the video. Okay, now let's test it. Now the first thing to test it, we are going to create, you see, add at least 3 books, show all books, and search for one book by title. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is, using our book class, we are going to create book 1 is equals book. So you can see there is a warning right here. It needs title and author in our book class. So we are going to add, I'll just call this one the first book. The title should be Python Basics, like this, Python Basics, and let me say the author would be Charles. And we'll have another book 2, and we'll call our book. So the title of this book 2 would be Learn. Oh, my system just froze up. Hold on. Yeah. Learn OOP. And I'll call it by Kelvin. Okay. So the next thing we're going to be doing is, since they say we should create 3 books, book 3, we'll call the book class, and we'll say, how do I say date? No, I need like data science, like this. and the author would be Bob. Bob. Like Bob. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, oh yeah, so that's it. So these are the three books. They now say we should show all the books, search for book by title and stuff. So since we have created like say all the objects, book one, book two, book three, and we're using the book class to like assign them together. So you can see the book class takes in title and author. So that's just basically it. Oh, I made mistake. I mistakenly dragged this here. Yeah. So that's it. So the next thing we're going to be doing is then we're going to create a library. So I'll not call just my library, and I'll not create an instance of it, and I'll not call the class. I'll call the library class like this. Yeah, the library class. So the library class doesn't take in any parameter, just like an empty array. Okay. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the books. So we're going to call the my library dot add book. So you can see, so to add book, what do we need? We need like a book. So this book now is like a book from this our book class. So to add book, we are going to add book one. The same thing. So I'll just copy this, Control C, Control V, Control V. So we're going to add book one, book two, and book three to the library. So you remember, we don't need to like tell Python the data type or the objects that is going to collect. So Python already knows that this book one, book two, book three is from this book class that we're adding it to the library. That's what it does here as well, like for the add book. So the next thing we're going to do is to show all the books. So to show all the books, what are we going to do? We're going to call the my library that we used as the instance of the class dot show books like this. So now it shows all the books. It runs this function. So we don't have any parameters input in the show books. Remember, I said you should ignore this self right here. So show books. So we just show the books. Now to find books, now say I'll call my library dot find books. And which book are we going to find? Let's say we want to find, so what's in our find books function, we have to put in the title of the book we want to find, right? So I'll just say LearnPython is the name of the book, and then I'll just print in another book that is not in our library. So my library dot find books, then I'll print in unknown, since unknown is not in our library. So that's just basically it. Now I know it's a lot to take in. Even our practice is like more difficult to understand than our first thing. But I just hope that you guys try to like rewatch and check if there's an issue. Maybe you can put it under in the comment section, and maybe I can make a very more cool video on this. Okay. So the next thing, if I run this program, you can see. So why is this saying learn OOP not found? Shit. So you can see, what's this? So book, you can see, yeah, for the first one we say book Python added to the library, book LearnOOP added to the library, and book data science added to the library. So you can see books in the library. I know the console will look a little bit confusing. So books in the library, Python basics, this. Then find books. Where is it saying? Books not found this. I think I ran into a little bit of error when I was checking, but it's in the find book. So if the find book it's equals self, it takes in the title, right? Then what's the problem? Oh gosh, what's the problem? Oh yes, I've seen the problem. The book not found is inside the for loop, so it keeps iterating and printing out the books not found. Okay, sorry. It's just like that's most errors, like in your indentation. That's like a very good it's not a good error actually, like an error that you might encounter in Python when writing indentation. So be very careful and always check your indentation, because Python doesn't deal with semicolon. Okay, so if you run this again, you can see, yeah, very cool. So you can see book. So we added the book, so it's now saying book Python basics added to the library, then OOP added to the library, data science added to the library. If you're saying where is this thing coming from, where is this book added to the library coming from, you can see it's because of this add book function that we did earlier. This one, add book function. So that's what it's doing. It's then we call the add book function and we're adding these books that we created as an instance of our book class. Okay, so we are now adding it. So it now lastly we call the show books and it shows us all the books in the library, and it shows us every single thing. Then we now search for a book. So find books, learn OOP. So it said found, learn OOP by Kelvin. And the second one, unknown, it said book not found. So that is basically everything. So you can play around with it, and if you find this video confusing, you can go through it. And if you still find it confusing after going through it, maybe you can just drop some random stuff in the comment section, and maybe I will create another better and more easier video to make you understand it better. Okay, yeah, so that's basically it for slide 14. The next video will be on final mini, our last mini project that we're going to be doing at the end of, for the end of this my basic things you need to know for Python series. Okay, so if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, your feedback helps me create better content for you all. And see you guys in our final exam.